I just want to add briefly that invitations went out to every progressive candidate running for office. PVC worked very diligently to have every progressive candidate here, and I will leave it there.
Thank you, Cassie. I'm going to I believe this is the microphone that you will pass back and forth when you answer the question. So I'm going to hand we'll hand that down. I think we're going to start and work alphabetically down the row. My name is Quentin Kidd. I'm the director of the Washington Center for Public Policy at Christopher Newport University, and I appreciate the opportunity to moderate this forum. Glad to see a lot of people here. Glad to see a lot of students. I don't know whether you're Thomas Elsa students or from other schools. But glad to see you here. It's an important civic function to show up for these kinds of things. Citizenship is about more than just voting. We learned how important voting is a couple of weeks ago. Citizenship is about this sort of stuff as well. So I'll lay out the ground rules and then we'll get started. So the questions were all submitted by you all. I didn't construct the questions. I sort of went through and edited them if I thought they needed to be edited, but I tried to keep the heart of the questions the way they were submitted. What the candidates have agreed to do with Cassie is 1-minute introductions of themselves. We're going to give 3 minutes per question. If you don't need that, don't feel like you have to take it because there are plenty of questions. And then 2-minute closing statements. And the agreement is that we'll always work alphabetically. So we don't have to worry about any altering orders. I'll keep time on my phone, and it isn't as precise as a stopwatch. So if you're going really long, then I might say something, but otherwise try to pay attention to time. All right, so we'll start with Sean Brown on the end, and we'll work our way down. Gary Hubbard, Karen Mallard, and David Nygaard. Right, so 1-minute introduction. The floor is yours.
Oh, this is the hard part, keeping it to 1 minute. I'm Sean. Thank you so much, PBC, for hosting this event and really being the change that we all want to see. I don't know that I need this, so I don't think I need it. I became a part of the social justice movement on one tragic day when an event interrupted my hopscotch game in front of my grandmother's house in Newport News, in fact, off of Chestnut Avenue. I took a break from my game outside, went in, got a glass of water, passed the television set, and looked at my grandmother, and she looked at me, and she said, well, remember, he told us that he might not get there with us. On that day, the day that Martin Luther King was assassinated, I understood that I was in us. I became a part of the movement. To the veterans, the seniors, and the children, I will fight for you in Washington, D.C. It is important that we have an opportunity for our cities, for our military, for our ports, for our economy, that we have a fighter who's willing to go to Washington and stand up for the progressive values that all of us have in this room. And you know what they are. The questions, we'll have a chance to talk about them. Scott Taylor, we're going to build a wall, all right. We're going to build a wall around you in November. And in November, we're going to make sure that you are defeated with your 97.3% voting record with 45. We say 45 here, right? We don't say the other thing. We say 45. So I appreciate the fact that everybody's here. I'm looking forward to finishing what we started in 2016 when I became the Democratic nominee. It's a good fight. It's a great fight. And I will continue my speech in my closing speech. But thank you so much for coming.
Gary Hubbard.
Oh, that's kind of hard to follow. My name is Gary Hubbard. I'm a Navy veteran. I'm also a general contractor in construction. I've been in business since '81. The reason I got into this was truly, I thought I could bring the fire and passion and stand up for the rights of the people that do not have a voice. The disabled, the poor, the hardworking men and women that are trying to get by on stagnant wages. I never paid anybody a minimum wage. When they came to work for me, I made it a point to pay them much higher. I believe in a strong union. Without unions, there would not be any middle class. And I look forward to Mr. Kidd's questions and any other things that we can do. Thank you for your time.
I'm going this way.
Instead of just jumping.
Because I am on heels. And I'm an elementary school teacher. This is my 30th year of teaching. I'm Karen Mallard, by the way. I just started my 30th year of teaching. And the day after the election, some children from my school, some immigrant children, Hispanic children, came off the bus, and they were terrified. They were crying hysterically because they were terrified that Trump was going to come and get them at school and take them away. I brought them into my classroom, and I told them that I would protect them, that they would be safe at school. And so then, in January, I joined the resistance. And then Betsy DeVos got confirmed as Secretary of Education, and I was furious. This woman is completely unqualified to oversee the education of millions of children, and I've spent my entire adult life advocating for public schools, teaching and working to improve them. And I'm not going to let Trump and DeVos dismantle public schools. I grew up, I'm a coal miner's daughter, and I grew up in Coburn, Virginia, and I come from the working class family that the Democrats have been champions for. And that's why I'm such a diehard Democrat. I want to fight for those working class and middle class families that feel they don't have a voice anymore. And so that's why I decided to run, to be that voice for them.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm here running because it's personal. It's personal because I'm on Obamacare. My 2 kids are on Obamacare with me. It's personal because my oldest son is a felon. He needs his rights restored, and he has no path to have his ability to come back as a productive member of society. And it's wrong. I'm here because it's personal, because my dad, I'm the sole caretaker for my dad. He's on Medicare, he's on TRICARE, he's a Navy veteran, as is most of my family, and he has no long-term care program. He's paying for it out of pocket. And when the Congress just passed this last tax bill, which was just the utter act of stupidity, it's on the back of seniors. It's going to be seniors that are going to be paying these bills, are going to be higher taxed. So my father's going to get to pay a higher tax because Apple wanted to bring in $250 billion at a discount. It's not fair. So I'm here asking for your support because it's personal. It's personal to me. It's personal when I lost my business to a greedy bank. It's personal when I lost my home to a greedy bank back in 2008. I'm David Nygaard. Some of you will know me as the jeweler, David Nygaard from David Nygaard Fine Jewelers. And I've lived through life, and I've experienced a lot of ups and downs. And it's that experience that I'd like to bring to the table tonight. So I thank you very much. I look forward to sharing more with you part of these.
So we'll begin the questions, and we're gonna again work alphabetically just to make things easier. Remember, 3 minutes. Some of these are going to be more difficult to answer in 3 minutes than others. But this is a forum. We have 5 candidates, at least at this point, running. The idea here is to introduce yourselves to people and also talk about some policies. So let me start off with a broad introductory kind of question. Within the progressive movement in the Democratic Party, like within any political party, there are wings. And so the Democratic Party has a wing on the progressive end that might be represented by somebody like Bernie Sanders, and on the centrist end, maybe by somebody like Mark Warner. Thinking about that spectrum, where would you identify yourself in that spectrum, and why? And what does that mean in terms of how you would be, what kind of a member of Congress you would be? Right? And so we'll start with Sean Brown.
I guess I'm going to get all the questions first. That's good.
Well, we are going to start alphabetically.
It's okay. As a Bernie national delegate in 2016, I am in the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party. I'm in the Elizabeth Warren wing of the Democratic Party. Why? Because I believe in $15 minimum wage. Yes, we need to help our small businesses. I believe in universal health care. I believe education is a right, all of those things that we have been articulating in the progressive wing. I was a member of the Democratic Central Committee for the state of Virginia in the 80s. Many of you recall Jessie Radley when she was a councilwoman and mayor of Newport News. She dragged me up and down 64 and 95 to the DNC meetings, the national and the state meetings. And I remember when I was told to step back because we, as people of color, we as poor people, middle class, we had to follow the lead of the Democratic Leadership Council, which I don't know if you are aware, it was not a part of the Democratic Party at that time. So I'm with Bernie and the progressive movement. I would join the Progressive House Caucus, and there are several other opportunities within the congressional delegations to be a part.
Great. Gary, Hubbard. And if you guys want to just hold your applause, and then we'll have plenty of time afterwards to applaud them, and then you'll have time to talk to them afterwards as well. All right. Gary.
Well, I guess I'm a progressive also. I do believe in universal health care, but I believe we're going to have to go slow because we've got to not collapse the entire system until we get to a universal health care. And also, yes, we believe in an equal pay for equal work. It is unconscionable to me, and I never did that in my business. I paid men and women the very same for the same job, and they make 82 cents versus the dollar. That tells me that, well, a single mother, a head of household, is only worth 82 cents. So what's the difference between her supporting her family and a man supporting her family? They have to pay the same. I paid the same. I believe they should pay the same. And I believe there should be a law to make this because no corporation is going to do that. We subsidize Walmart, Amazon, General Electric. The people that work there have to use social services to be able to survive. And that is unconscionable. They make $12 billion a day. They're worth $145 million. The family itself is $1 trillion a year company. So yes, I'm a progressive, a proud.
Thank you, Karen Mallard.
All right, so my Republican friends and people that I know call me a bleeding heart liberal. The Democrats that I know, my friends, call me a progressive Democrat. I call myself an unapologetic Democrat. Because when I was talking to a friend and they're like, oh, what, you're a Democrat? And I'm like, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, oh, no, I'm not. We need to be running on our record, not from it. You think about all the wonderful things Democrats have done. You think about how we have done all the civil rights, all the things we've passed, how we fight for the right to marry the person you love. Everything that's we want is universal health care. Everybody has a right to have health care. When I'm teaching children and they don't have health care, you can't learn if you have a toothache. You can't learn if you're sick. And the nurse at school becomes the primary care physician. Every American deserves health care. It's a right, not a privilege. So I fall in line with those progressive values as well. And I believe that we have to stand up and we have to fight to take back our country. So I believe we should be unapologetic and stand on our records and go for taking care of our country and our citizens.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nygaard.
And amen. Thank you. We do need to stand as progressives, and I think we need to stand on policies. The reason I'm running is because they're near and dear to my heart. When we talk about the firsthand, the right to love who you choose to love, well, I fought that firsthand. I've experienced that firsthand as the first openly gay candidate. In terms of what Gary was talking about in terms of employment, we were named Best Places to Work. We had one of the fastest growing companies in the area. We were the only retailer ever to be named the Best Places to Work on that list with Inside Business. That's because we provided exceptional benefits and very creatively, and we provided exceptional pay for more than our competition. I also, I'm going to fall kind of all over the place because I do believe in free market solutions. So for instance, when we talk about Obamacare is a wonderful piece of legislation, and I benefit from it. And I can assure you that I'm going to fight to my last breath to make sure that that is not repealed. But with any major piece of legislation, it's going to need to be tweaked. Now, I believe that we do need to have more insurance companies in Virginia. You know, there's really basically one. I mean, I think all the state employees lost their health insurance this year when Optima pulled out. So we really need to have some more free market solutions within, say, the healthcare debate, so that we can have more choices and bring down the premiums for small businessmen. I'm a small businessman. Many of my colleagues are paying, $6,000 a month with a $15,000 deductible. That's not right either. So I think we need to solve that. Additionally, now we talked about this Bernie Sanders, and I appreciated Bernie Sanders very much, because I can tell you that I think that we have enslaved an entire generation to student loans that they have no reasonable way to repay. And just like in the housing bubble in 2008, and I'm sure many of you have experienced that, I certainly did, there was a lot of easy money going in houses in the early 2000s. And just like that, the prices went up, and then there was a bubble, and the market collapsed. We had the same thing, I think, with the education. We had a lot of easy money going in loans for education. The prices went way up. At the same time, technology eliminated a lot of jobs. That's not fair. I think that we are going to need a federal solution, similar to what we did with the housing crisis, because we've got many student loans that aren't being repaid. And so I think we're going to need to do several things, such as, the federal rate can be 0. Why can't we bring some of these loans down to 0? If people have these loans, why can't we forgive a certain portion of them as they do as they do teaching, or in certain economic areas where we can benefit. So I'm very much in favor of addressing the student loan issue. I'm very much in favor of some other issues. I think my time is running out. But I'll be honest with you, I'm going to fall all over the place on some of these. I'm pro-Israel. I'm a staunch supporter of Israel in the Middle East. I'm also a supporter of small business. Anyway, thank you.
Yep, we'll come back. Yep, we'll have plenty of time. Maybe I may interject some lightning rounds into here. You don't have to take 3 minutes, but let me ask you something that's happening right now. Should Democrats, let me phrase this the right way, should the government be shut down tomorrow? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
I was so happy to get an email from Mark Warner saying that he was not satisfied to vote for the spending as is without CHIP. That's the health insurance program for children, and of course, without a clean DACA. So I think we have to stand our ground. People all over this country are expecting the Democratic Party expecting us to stand our ground. Perez should be on TV standing our ground. So yes, I think there are some provisions that there comes a point in time, and now is that point in time, in which if people are going to respect us, the way that I saw people coming to the polls in York County, in Hampton, and in Virginia Beach on election day, they were running to the precinct to vote for Democrats because of the fact they're sick and tired of what's going on in Washington. So I think we have to stand our ground and make a point that we are a party that stands for something. Yes, we have our Bernie Sanders wing, we have our Hillary wing, we have our Obama wing, we have the Mark Warner wing, we have all those wings. But at the end of the day, we made history once again in the state of Virginia this past November. I was pleased to be at the inauguration activities this past Saturday, and I think for once and for all, people have to see us as the fighters in the Democratic Party that we used to be.
Well, shutting down the United States government is not meant to be taken lightly. Not only does it hurt our reputation across the world, but this is money and time you cannot get back. As a chief estimator for one of the largest corporations on the East Coast, you can never get back what you've lost. So we have to be very careful. We need a clean DACA bill. They keep trying to add on. We need a clean children's health insurance bill. They have not funded that for years. We need to fund it for at least 10 years so we don't run across this again. We've got to understand that the bipartisan support, Democrats now have an edge to make them come to the table. The Republicans, Mitch McConnell, Mr. Obstruction himself, doesn't have his own votes in his own Republican Senate. So we've got to understand that we are now in control. and we need a clean DACA bill. And build this wall is foolish. As a general contractor, you're looking at $75 billion in 15 years worth of work. There is absolutely no way that you can build that for 18 or $20 billion. No infrastructure, no gas, no diesel, no food, no labor. Run across the desert and chase some rabbit or something. So that will not work.
So let me just clarify. Do you think we should shut down tomorrow, or should we not?
Well, I think we could still make them stay in Congress. I really do not believe we need to shut down the government simply because the Republicans are being obstructionists and trying to add everything onto the bills that are clean. We need clean bills. I'm not for shutting down the government, but if Katie barred the door, then yes, it will be, because we need to stay strong and show the Republicans and quit being slapped across the face 15 or 20 times.
Okay.
All right, I believe that we need to stand strong. We should not let them hold children hostage. We need a clean DACA bill. We need to fund CHIP, and we need to make sure that our children have the health insurance that they need. I think the Republicans have proven that they cannot govern because they are at all three branches of government. They are in control. So they're the ones shutting down the government because they haven't done their job. They haven't gotten it done. So we need to stand firm and stand strong for those children and fight for them and not give in.
So let me clarify.
Yes.
What do you?
The Republicans, if they're not going to get the job done, they'll be the ones shutting down the government.
Okay.
We're not giving in. We're taking care of children.
Okay.
That was a good question, and it deserves an actual straightforward answer. I am completely opposed to shutting down the government. I would rather have a DACA bill and a CHIP bill with compromise than nothing at all. This area is particularly susceptible to problems when the government is shut down. I think it costs us somewhere between $6 million and $7 million a day. $6 and $7 million per day in our district. No, I don't think we should shut the government down. I think we need to be responsible. I'm not a politician. I'm a business guy. I say we cut a deal. I would rather have a CHIP bill than none. I'd rather have a DACA bill than none. So no, I am not in favor of shutting the government down. I think we negotiate from a position of strength, but we negotiate and we compromise. I mean, that's what we have to do.
Okay. All right, next question. I'm going to get into a little more substance on policy. Virginia struggles, like most states do, with a really large opioid crisis. The second congressional district is not immune to that crisis. There are limited facilities for patients in the second congressional district who are struggling with substance abuse. What are your policy options for dealing with the opioid crisis? What would you have Congress do to respond to the opioid crisis if you were in Congress right now?
I think we have to talk about how did we get here. And perhaps we got here because somebody didn't have a job. Perhaps we got here because somebody couldn't feed their children. Perhaps we got here for a whole number of reasons that led to the option for the opioid crisis, or option for taking a drug in order to be able to ease the tension in the home and in the workplace and so forth. So my policy is to look at economic development policy that creates the jobs, has the training available, addresses the issues of our veterans and others who are subjected to this crisis. And one of the things that we need to do to start is to call it a disease. Let's call it what it is. And once we start calling it a disease, and then we can look at some options in terms of having some facilities available to address it. But let's start first with how we got here, and then let's talk about how we're going to look at a remedy.
Well, I know firsthand the opioid crisis. Nobody raises their hand and say, I want to be a drug addict today. We got into this because it was so easy for the doctors and the large pharmaceuticals to give out pain medication. Once that happened, then they couldn't afford the opiates anymore. They couldn't afford the pain medication, so they turned to heroin, or they turned to meth, or they turned to fentanyl. So we've got to actually have rehabilitation clinics. this is a tough, tough thing to do. I know people personally fighting this struggle. So this is nothing lightly that we take. Nobody raises their hand and say, I want to be poor. Nobody raises their hand and say, I want to be a drug addict today. We've got to hold the large pharmaceutical companies accountable. They're up there lobbying. They're paying out millions of dollars just to be sure that they can sell their product. I want to hold not only health insurance companies accountable and say, if you pull out of a district, you pull out of a state before you come back to practice in that state, you pay a penalty either in Medicare or Medicaid. Without Medicaid, there's no rehabilitation. People that are strung out need some help. They need somewhere to go. And if I get there, I will sponsor legislation to make sure we have the rehabilitation clinics. And I want to see the big pharmaceutical companies pay a penalty into this. These are problems that were started on this, and that's why I really think we need to do something with the clinics.
Okay, so the opioids were overprescribed, and the companies shipped large amounts of them to small pharmacies or pharmacies in small towns, obviously knowing that there wasn't that much need to it, that it was going to be overused, and created this crisis. They've already done some of this, where they restrict the amount of prescriptions a doctor can write. You can only, like when you go home from the hospital or you have surgery, you're only given a prescription for like 3 pills, 5 pills, 7 pills, instead of a month's supply. So they've limited that. We need to continue that and crack down. But these pharmaceutical companies, they sent all of these large amounts of the drug to these areas with small populations, knowing what was going to happen, so they need to be held accountable. And so we need to also provide centers and funding for treatment centers and for the hospitals in order to have the medications to help treat it. Ralph talked about this when he was running for governor, and I think he had some good plans here in Virginia as well. So the Congress, we can help fund that and regulate what the pharmacies do and the doctors do.
The opioid crisis isn't rich and poor. There's many people in wealthy communities that are addicted just as in the poor. It's not a rich and poor issue. I will add that it's a personal issue. A young man down the street from us named Curtis fell into this situation. He is now in a public facility. It breaks my heart. What do we do? I think you're right. I think they were overprescribed. I think they were under-regulated, particularly in terms of the way they were directed. The way they prescribe these, they didn't realize, I guess, perhaps, how highly addicted they are. I think the FDA kind of dropped the ball on that. I do think that we need to consider looking at funding other means of pain management that the Medicare and Medicaid are currently not funding. So I'd like to see those areas, some alternative methods for pain management, some other ways to try to address this, so we're not always prescribing the pain meds. So I think that's one area. I think we do need more facilities to treat, and I think we need to remove the stigma from treating people with this addiction. And yes, I think it is a disease. It is a disease, but I think we can treat it, and we can treat it with public funds. I think the drug companies certainly have benefited from the overprescription, and I think they can certainly help cover the expense of additional treatment facilities.
Great. All right. Shifting topics a little bit, sticking with healthcare. When the Affordable Care Act passed, everybody realized at the time that it wasn't a perfect piece of legislation. The assumption Democrats had was that they would be able to go back, like major league legislation have always had happen, and go back and adjust it and correct the parts of it that weren't working very well. But in the midterm elections of 2010, Republicans took control of the House of Representatives, and any effort to reform the Affordable Health Care Act was sort of cut off. So we know it's not a perfect piece of legislation. It's not it hasn't practically implemented itself perfectly, and then Republicans have been undermining it since the election of Donald Trump. What's your position on healthcare right now, the way it's working right now? What will you do if you end up in Congress to deal with people who are struggling with high premiums? And would you support ultimately a single-payer plan?
Yes, I support a single-payer plan. I am one of the co-founders of the Newport News Free Clinic. So I understand from the ground up the issues and concerns that we have. What would I do? Well, I think this tax act, I call it, is about to help us make some real serious decisions. Whether it's money that's not going to be there to address some of the issues that we've talked about with the opiates, or Social Security, or Medicaid, we have got to look at some options with funding these rural clinics, with the urban clinics. You know, there's some, as we know, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars with this recent tax bill, and obviously it was a tax cut, but really an opportunity to create the need to cut these social programs. So we need to understand that a lot of what we're talking about now, if we don't watch out, if we're not careful, it's going to happen right in front of our eyes. So I do support a single-payer program. I was a student in England, so as a student in London at London School of Economics and a student at Oxford, I understand the national healthcare system, and I've been one of those people on the bandwagon a long time ago with Ted Kennedy talking about how this could come into effect here in the United States. So I think that we do need to look at the premiums. It's horrible. There's an adjustment obviously that needs to be made. We need to have some alternative ways for healthcare in this country while we can essentially get to 2020, replace who's in DC right now. Hopefully this midterm election now is going to help us get us on the road into a pathway that we do have universal health care. So my solution for the immediate time period with the health care, with the community-free clinics, not just in Newport News, but Hampton and Virginia Beach, is to make sure that we can shore up those facilities.
I absolutely support universal health care. Canada pays $34 a month out of their pay. If you're under $35,000, you pay nothing. We're the richest, most powerful country on earth. And it's a shame we don't have health care. And we need to do this. It is not only the morally right thing to do, it's economically the right thing to do. We pay 10 times what it costs for health care. In India, you pay $800 for an $84,000 drug for hepatitis C here. That's the same program. How do you square that? How do you even think that's anywhere near? The big pharmaceutical companies have got their foot on our neck. The health insurance companies are strangling us. We've got to start holding them accountable. And until we get rid of a for-profit health care, we're going to be forever beholden.
Okay, so I totally support universal health care. I've been teaching for 30 years, and I served on the board of the Virginia Beach Education Association and as an officer. So part of what I did there is to lobby with city council and school board, with police officers and firefighters. We lobbied for better health care benefits, lower premiums, and for higher raises. And so what we did in 2014, the school system and city council joined together, because the more people you have, the higher bargaining power you have with the insurance companies. Well, then they went to high deductible. So in 2014, I looked at this high deductible plan. I have 2 kids in college. So after 26 years of teaching in Virginia Beach, I left and went to Chesapeake to teach, because Chesapeake has their own pharmacy. So they cut out the middleman. So they have their own pharmacy where I pay $2 for a prescription that used to cost me for a month's supply that I used to pay $40 for. And so the pharmacy is a huge thing in Chesapeake Public Schools. It's very helpful because people who work there, bus drivers, custodians, they can afford their heart medicine. So why is it so inexpensive here in Chesapeake than it is? Well, it's because of the middleman and the markups that drug companies have, like Walgreens and CVS. They mark it up, so you take out the middleman, and that's what they did in Chesapeake. They just started our clinics. I can go for free if I have bronchitis or an ear infection. I can go there for free and see a doctor, no copay, and get treated. So if we can do that with just Chesapeake Public Schools, why can't we do that on a larger scale? So that's what I think we should do, and we need to move to that. And like Gary said, we got to get rid of the for-profit part. I have a coalition that I've built of retired healthcare administrators, physicians, and human resource directors who are advising me on how to cut costs and control the cost of healthcare and how to make it affordable so that everybody can have quality healthcare.
Thank you very much. First of all, I am going to say that I believe that healthcare is a right, it's not a privilege. It's something that we need to make sure that we take care of our children. They need to be covered. And I'm advocating this very manner expansion of Medicaid waivers so that we can cover more children as needed. I believe that I'm the only candidate here on Obamacare. Am I the only candidate? Anybody else here?
My daughter is.
Okay.
I'm a veteran.
Okay, that's right. Okay.
I'm
Thank you.
on vet insurance.
All right. So I am on Obamacare. As I said, and actually I think we echoed each other in my intro with what you just said, we do need to fix the major piece of legislation. It is Obama's primary piece of legislation. It's his golden, it's the golden piece. And I think we need to fix it. And of course it was passed in a way that we needed to adjust it and fix it. I don't understand the vitriol against it, but I think it can be fixed. Now I am a free market guy. Maybe I'm not as progressive, but I'm going to tell you, a free market guy. I know that when my brother and sister-in-law were in England, and they were covered under the health plan in England, great health plan, but you know what? They needed to have extra policies. They continued to have to purchase insurance in England to make sure that certain illnesses were covered in a timely manner. When my brother-in-law's father had a heart problem, they told him he had a 3-year wait because he was in his 70s when they discovered the heart problem. Now, ladies and gentlemen, last year I had a near-fatal heart attack. Gave me a wake-up call. But I was treated immediately. And our healthcare system does work. And I think it can work better when we allow more insurance companies to participate. When we have one single insurance company working in Virginia, that's a problem. We need to adjust the requirements under Obamacare so that we can invite more insurance companies to participate. We talked about the free clinics, which I am a great supporter of. In fact, I'm doing a fundraiser at the Virginia Beach Free Clinic, and I have done fundraisers with the Virginia Beach Free Clinic in past years. Those clinics are critical, and they do need more support. One of the things I would like to see, and let's not be naive, okay? Any of us being a junior congressman is not going to probably be able to pull a lot of dollars to this area because we're not there long enough. But I will say this. I think we can use the free market. There are a lot of free grant money that the federal government is offering. And one of the things I would like to see is if I am elected, I'm going to make sure that we have grant writers in each of the congressional offices so that we can take care of constituents who are writing grants. Because I believe that if we can get more federal grants into this market, into this community, into this district, that's one way to increase federal funding in areas that we need. So when it comes to federal money, I think we can do more with grants for the free health clinic. I think we can do more. I guess I'd also like to add that I think mental health, one of the things that I think, mental health issues needs to be covered under the Affordable Care Act. That's one of the areas where I think we can improve the Affordable Care Act, is to make sure that we recognize that mental health is also a need. And I think we need to make sure we have greater coverage in that area. Let me make sure I've covered everything. I think that's it. Yep. Expanded Medicare. Yep. Waivers. Yep. Absolutely.
So let me do a follow. So three of you sound like you are for universal health care. I think you get.
Oh, let me make sure.
Are you?
I am absolutely positively against single payer. I think that there are still ways that the free market can help our healthcare system improve. Because even in single payer, you still end up buying insurance for things that you need in a timely manner.
Great, all right. One more healthcare related question in a more direct way. These are things that people are interested in knowing about. What is your position on women's health care? And in particular, could you talk about any personal involvement you have had with women's health care groups such as Planned Parenthood and others?
Yes, I had an opportunity to make phone calls for Planned Parenthood in Virginia Beach. I guess it was a few months ago. There's Stephanie can tell me exactly. I was there a few months ago, and fully supported women's right to choose, all of the above. So I do think, and I want to piggyback off of something David just said. The ability to bring some of this federal funding into the community for the healthcare issues is very, very important part of the solution to this problem. So my involvement primarily has been with Planned Parenthood. I'm just trying to think of some of the other coalitions that I've been working with, but women's rights, obviously that's part of my platform to make sure that there's once and for all equality.
Well, I think we've always seen the constant war on the poor, the constant war on the disabled, and the constant war on people of color, and the constant war on women. It should be the women's right to be able to choose her own fertility problems. We have a constant war on this. And make no mistake, I support Planned Parenthood. My son's fiance got her, well, she was having hormone problems, so she got her birth control there to regulate that. Not only does Planned Parenthood advise, consent, they're an actual clinic that helps with cancer, different medications. We have to support Planned Parenthood. As far as David said with the free market system, I was actually with Blue Cross and Blue Shield in my company. We were paying over $2,000 a month, my wife and I. We couldn't afford it. The downturn, the subprime mortgages, George Bush down near killed my business. Sorry about that. But we went back there, and so we decided to get a cheaper policy. They insured her, but kicked me off the policy entirely. So there is no good old days, and there is no for-profit health care that's going to ever work, ever, period. So yes, I support Planned Parenthood, and I support against this constant war against women's rights, people of color, and also poor. People need a voice. Somebody has to be a voice. I believe I bring the fire and passion to these people for that.
Okay, so I work in a profession that's predominantly female. And when I would go to those meetings with city council members and talk with them about the health care benefits and the premiums and why are the costs rising so much? And they're like, well, it's mostly female. So you women you go to the doctor more, you have babies, so you have to have higher premiums because the risk is more and because you use the doctor more. So you're punishing me for being female. Well, women's rights are human rights, and I am completely pro-choice. And the last thing that I did for Planned Parenthood was in December, I made a donation to Planned Parenthood in Scott Taylor's name. Since he wants to take health care away from women.
That was cute. Okay, so I guess when we talk about women's health care and women's health needs, I've been very active, particularly in my business, in helping raise funds, whether it's the Susan Combs Foundation, the American Heart Association, which I think is the #1 cause for women's death, the American Cancer Association. I've been involved deeply in a lot of these charitable organizations that fund research. So recently, the Susan Combs Foundation, we did a donation and we were able to raise about $15,000 through that. Same thing with cystic fibrosis, muscular dystrophy, Planned Parenthood, the LGBT Life Center is another clinic that offers health care for minorities. So my involvement in women's health care is really my involvement in all health care, because I think all health care needs to be addressed, and I think it needs to be included in and defended in the Affordable Care Act.
Great. All right, so we're going to shift a little bit away from healthcare now. Let's talk about marijuana. What are your views and what are your positions on the decriminalizing the medical use of marijuana or legalizing the recreational use of marijuana?
Yes.
As a veteran, there's a lot of vets over there that actually self-medicate. They're looking into how to help vets with PTSD, different trauma, different pain medications. And we've seen how the big pharmacies treat pain. They just give you more drugs. Working with what Karen just said, there's a place in West Virginia, 900 population, and they push 4 million pills through there. What is that, 100,000 pills per day for somebody? How are you going to take that many pills? But as far as marijuana, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions says he believes in state rights, only to the point where they want to impose on state rights. So you can't have it both ways. It's a large economically incentive for states to legalize marijuana. I believe it eventually is going to be legalized because I believe in civil and criminal justice reform. Why put somebody in jail for having 10 marijuana cigarettes that we morally is wrong for a prisons for profit deal, and it's actually more geared against people of color, but it's also economically stupid. You're paying $84,000 a year for somebody that had 5 marijuana cigarettes that you put in prison for 3 years. So we've got to change that.
Yes, it should be legal.
Okay, so I actually agree. And I think I did an interview. Yeah, I did. I actually just talked about this in one of my interviews recently. And so this is kind of where my libertarian kind of inkling kind of comes out. I believe completely that, and this is a federal issue. Why has Virginia had a problem legalizing marijuana? In addition, yeah, okay, we're southern and all that. But it's a federal issue. If you legalize it, you're going to still face federal laws regarding the money. Colorado is now facing that issue. I think it is insane to waste resources chasing after Colorado because of marijuana. To be honest with you, it's just insane. I don't know why they want to do that. But at the end of the day, I believe 100% that we're going to have to decriminalize marijuana for medical use at the federal level, and that we then allow the states to decide what they want to do recreationally, and then we can regulate it, we can tax it, and we can put some good use to it, right? I think we can do that wholeheartedly. I think one of the problems with our current policy is the selective enforcement. Seems like we only want to selectively enforce it in certain neighborhoods, but in other neighborhoods, we're going to kind of turn the other way. I was talking with a black pastor just yesterday, and he was discussing with me how the police at Norfolk State, when they go to do the tailgating, they are right there writing tickets. They're right there writing tickets at Norfolk State for people tailgating that have left the game. But when you're at ODU and you leave tailgating, you've got the police just showing you out the door, right? Just directing you out. Now we both know that they're drinking at both of these football games, right? But we choose selective enforcement. It's a racist issue. It's unfair. And I'm completely against that. Marijuana, in my opinion, has some very good medical uses, and I think we have been stupid to ignore those over so many years. So I would like to see decriminalization at the federal level, and then let the states decide recreational what they should do. Now, as a congressman, I believe that a congressman at the federal level has a bully pulpit. Now, we're not going to. If I'm the congressman, I'm not going to have a lot to say over what goes on in the state. But I think that as a congressman that I can speak to the issue and help the state perhaps decide in a way that I think would be fundamentally a little more freedom. Because I do think that marijuana is a lot less dangerous than alcohol. And so I think we can regulate it the same way.
Great. This next question is about education. Is there a place for vouchers at all? Is there a place for vouchers? And I mean, this is why I would never consider running for office. You know, this is a question that's almost impossible to answer. Solve the public education problem, but how do we get our arms around some of the problems at the federal level? Some of the problems in public education. Are vouchers part of the answer at all? And if they're not part of the answer, what is the answer for students who might need to have specialized education that they can't get in the public school system, etc.? I know that's a big open-ended question. It's a big open-ended question that was sent to me. I'm trying to make some sense out of it, make some context out of it. So take that for what you will. How do you solve the education problems in our country?
So I'll ask my mother, the teacher, the former teacher, to come up here and talk for several hours. This is not a hard question for me. There's no place for vouchers. There's absolutely no place for vouchers. Okay, so now what do we do? We take a look at making sure that our teachers are paid more. We take a look at the education system, the curriculum itself. In many of our communities, we have to understand that children are in the 2nd Congressional District. We have most of our schools are 40% of the kids are on free or reduced lunch. There are other schools within the district at 80% free or reduced lunch. So think about what happened today when kids didn't go to school, or last week when they didn't go to school. Where did they eat? On the Peninsula, many kids went to the Boys and Girls Clubs, but what about the other places? So we have to understand a free breakfast, a free lunch. There are some communities that do a free dinner. So once we can feed them, now how do we educate them? My mother, I've sat at the dinner table my entire life, and I've heard that children have to be educated in multiple ways. There's different types of learning that you have to. So we have to address all of those issues. But most importantly, we have to have a way to work with our school systems. And I know that we are all running for Congress, but I'm really so sick and tired of people telling me, especially in 2016, oh, you can't bother that because you're running for Congress. You shouldn't be concerned about what's happening in the school system. You shouldn't be concerned about what's happening in the cities, in the counties. It is about making sure that we have good teachers, that we pay them well, that we have superintendents. Even in Newport News, the effort to bring in a new superintendent now, that we have superintendents that understand that it's important to educate every child every day. Children with special needs, disabilities, live in whatever zip code. So I think we have to first address the fact that we need to make sure that we have people who understand the kids and people who understand the issue. So again, there's no role for a voucher anywhere in my mind in terms of supporting the public school system.
Well, vouchers are like coupons. It seems like the Republicans want to give you a coupon for Medicare, Medicaid, coupons for education. Let's face it, without public education, we're going to be like a third world country. Of course we support education. And now they're trying to roll back the protections for the Americans with Disability Act. We've got to make sure our schools actually instruct our children, get them ready for undergraduate work. We've got to be able to fund these children. We will hold the states responsible that they must make a priority to make sure our teachers, our instructors are paid well enough so they don't have to struggle and buy supplies for their students that we can pay for. We've got to make sure our children get an education, because it's very funny. The nations that have the most educated workforce and the nations that has the most healthiest workforce can compete and win globally. We've got to ensure that we make sure there's a nation of 300 million people. Do you seriously think private education has that many people or that many coupons to go around? Absolutely not. As a businessman, I understand money and economics very well. This is something that we must pay for, and we will.
Okay, you want to improve public education? Why don't you start asking teachers? Everybody has an opinion, but they don't listen to us. That's why
wanted to find out how to improve healthcare, I went to physicians, healthcare administrators. I started talking to the experts in the field. I'm an expert in the field. I am a reading specialist. I have several degrees. And do you all know there's a teacher shortage in Virginia? Like 1,000 teachers. And it's in fields like special education. So the most needy children have the least experienced teachers. And you expect education to improve? Okay, so like you were saying about in Finland, do you know that if you want to become a teacher in Finland, it's harder to become a teacher than it is a physician. It's harder to get into the School of Education there than the School of Medicine. They're paid more and their education is free. So, you get what you pay for. But the other thing is, I want to tell you that there's so many unfunded mandates from the state and from the federal government. And I'm teaching right now in a portable that has a hole in the floor. So, you want to take, absolutely no way should you ever take a dime of taxpayer money to pay for a private education. Public schools, we take every kid, and we teach them to the best of our ability. We need to provide more training. That's what I do as a reading specialist and instructional specialist. I train teachers, I write the curriculum. I look at the data longitudinal, and I try to fix the curriculum for it. But we teach every single child. Private schools get to pick and choose their students. So don't be comparing apples and oranges. And let teachers have a say and a voice. We need professional development. We need higher pay. We're competing, like my sons are engineering students at Old Dominion, and they would be great teachers. They take after their mom. They're great communicators and collaborators, but they're not going to teach because of the salary. So those people in math and science, they make way more in the private sector. So we need to find a way to incentivize those kids going to college to become teachers. There are colleges across the country that are closing their education departments because people aren't going to school to become teachers. We need to start, I want to reclaim some respect for my profession, because we need to give teachers the respect that they deserve, and we need to start giving them the pay they deserve. Ralph Northam and I talked about it, and Pam, his wife is our lovely first lady now. She was a teacher, and so is Mark Herring's wife, Laura, and Tim Kane's wife. So they understand what teachers do day in and day out, and how much they give to the community. There's teachers right now in the parking lot at school, and they're volunteering at school for our parent night, or they're like me and we go to our kids' ball games. We're very involved in the community. We're leaders in the community as well. So if you want to improve education, give teachers the opportunity to have a voice and provide the salary commensurate with the responsibility of the job.
So I'm a product of public schools. I believe in public schools. My teachers made a huge impact on my life, and I am grateful for public school teachers. They made a huge impact. My favorite job in the world, yes, I have a business. My favorite job in the world was when I got to teach at Chowan University as adjunct. Loved it. It's not a public school, but hey, I figured I'd throw that in. This is a personal issue, and I, as a repentant Republican, once upon a time, thought that charter schools were a great idea. So I saw firsthand. My twin daughters are in North Carolina, and they attend a charter school. And I saw what that really means to the public schools. So my children were in North Carolina in Elizabeth City, and they were in predominantly black schools. And what I saw was the rich white lawyer, the divorce lawyer that represented my wife. The rich white lawyers got together and they created a charter school. And all the rich white kids, and then some of the other white kids, go to the charter school. And they peel those kids out of the public school. And they peel off of the resources of the public school. And so when I go to the public school, when I go to the charter school and I see what's going on there, 15% are maybe black, the rest are white. When I go to the public school, it's 60% black. So what happened there? Now, once upon a time I was in favor of it. When I saw it practically, I thought, no. Because my twins were in the charter school, but my 17-year-old was in the public school that began to lose funding and resources, and his education suffered because the charter school began to steal resources. That's not fair, that's not right, that's why it's personal for me. So no, I'm not in favor of charter schools. Not anymore. Sometimes we learn, right? So I would say that one of the things we do need, and particularly when I saw this at university, we need to have smaller classes, which means we need to have more teachers. We need to integrate more technology into our schools. So what does that mean? That means we're going to have to training for teachers. It's going to have to be more training, and it's going to have to be funded. And I think the federal government has a responsibility to make sure that we provide an adequate education, a good education, for all citizens, especially the least of our citizens, but all citizens. I think it is a shame that some neighborhoods have terrible schools. So I really would like to see more funds, in whether it's Title A, more funds going into these poor school districts. One of the things Sean was talking about, food and feeding children and meal programs, and one of the things I began to see in my campaigning was I was participating with the Penisula Food Bank. What a wonderful program they have. Is anybody familiar with it? They have a wonderful program. And one of the things that struck me about the food bank, by the way, we're going to do a fundraiser for them, and I'm going to be blatant. They have a big fundraiser coming up, and it's important for everybody to go. But I'm going to say this. The food bank gets money from the farm bill. Sometimes we kind of shoot some of these other programs. One of the things I realize is where all that food goes from the farm bill, it goes into the food bank, and it supports kids who need food. So everything seems to be connected. So when I see the farm bill, I say we need to fund it because we know where the food goes. We need to, I talked earlier about student loans. It's a major crisis. I think one of the biggest incentives we can do is use the student loan situation to entice people into education so that we can begin to bring more teachers in and use these student loans that we already have, they're having trouble paying. There can be loan forgiveness, debt forgiveness, and I think that really needs to be addressed because student loans, I think, can really kind of be mixed with this educational issue and very nicely.
Great, thank you. Let me just do a rapid sort of follow-up question.
Can I respond real quick to something?
There's no such thing as a terrible school. Okay, there might be struggling schools because the communities and the neighborhoods surrounding that and the families are struggling there, but there are no terrible schools. We need to support struggling schools. We need to help those communities. We need to provide the support so those children can be successful later on. So there's no such thing as a terrible school. So I just want to say that.
Okay, great. Let me just do a quick follow-up. Do you support a national curriculum?
Well, that's a new one. I've not been asked that.
Well, it is a debate in Congress. So.
Yeah, thank you. Somebody say good luck. No, I don't. I don't know the debate. I don't know what the issues are, but I believe.
When I say national curriculum, I mean national standards.
Yeah,
there's a debate about national standards, whether we should have national standards, whether the same standard should be applied across all state lines, or whether, as education historically has been, is a local state issue.
I do think that in Virginia we are in a particularly different situation because the Virginia Constitution actually has education as one of the primary functions of the state of Virginia. So because of that, I would look at the standard that we would have here in Virginia perhaps as a higher standard. We're the birthplace and home of the first education in the United States. We are a place that, and I'm concerned about this, even the SOLs. I don't think that we should have the SOLs. Children can go to private schools and not have to deal with SOLs, and it's a different grading system. It's a whole different world. So because of the uniqueness of us in the state of Virginia and our Constitution I would not support national standards.
Well, I'm a little bit different. I believe there should be national standards because retention with just repetition is not true education. We need to take the time and listen to the teachers, like Karen said, and see about educating our children. Like I said before, the nation that has the most educated workforce wins. We need to invest in science, technology, engineering, math. That's what we've got to do. It is no longer just being able to go out and work with your hands and make a decent living. We need to make sure that our economy, our jobs is viable enough that we ensure the future of our children to have a viable economy and to get a job. Without education, national standards is about the only way that you're going to be able to take this many schools and have a curriculum. Yes, there's going to be differences, and yes, there's going to be different teachers that's going to have the say-so, then they should be able to have the say-so on what needs to be done with the children. And we're going to have to listen to the teachers and see about the viable legislation that we're going to have to bring about to make sure that we educate our children. Because without education, you might as well just go work for 7-Eleven, Farm Fresh, wherever, because no longer are we going to be able to compete with the world in the science and the technology and the engineering and the engineers there. And like Karen said, we need to raise teacher salaries because, yes, the private industry is dragging all the people out of the teaching fields to work for private enterprise because the money is much, much better.
Thank you. Okay, so there's the Common Core state standards that they've already tried to implement, and some states did not ratify them. We did not have the Common Core here in Virginia because we already had the Virginia Standards of Learning. And so Virginia is already way ahead of that. And as the reading specialist, when a child comes and enrolls in our school, I'm the one who tests them and decides which classroom to put them in and the reading groups and all of that. So I will tell you that when children come from certain states, I'm like, oh no, because they don't have the same high standards that we have in Virginia. Virginia schools are pretty strong, and our schools here in our area in the 2nd District are really strong. So there needs to be some guidelines, I guess. But my biggest concern is the kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade children. I'm at a primary school now. The children that we have now, what kind of jobs are there going to be when they graduate from high school? You think about these kids that I'm teaching now, they've never known the world without the iPad and the iPhone. It's click, click. So we have to teach these children how to be problem solvers, critical thinkers. And they have to be able to learn and continuously learn because that's the way technology is making us have to relearn so that we can learn a new trade or a new job. So we have to think about those things, and that can be something as a general thing. But I'm going to tell you that it took us several years to get rid of. In kindergarten, they had like 27 social studies objectives in Virginia. What do kindergartners need to do? Read and math. They don't need all these social studies objectives. They don't need all these science objectives. So when you kind of do something like that and you plan a national curriculum, people get a little crazy. In kindergarten, what do we need to focus on in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade? First, children have to learn. They learn to read, and then they read to learn. So that's the only caution that I have for that. And as someone who has spent 30 years and who writes curriculum for a living, I think that I would be a great representative in Congress to really put the brakes on some of this mess that they might try to pass.
So the question was, do we support a national curriculum, national standards? That's the question. Okay. That's a tough question. Because, one of the problems I think I've seen is that you either teach to test or you teach to learn. So when I got to teach at Chowan University, again, favorite job, I was really free as a college professor to be able to come up with my own curriculum to teach, to learn. So I loved that idea. But I do think that having some national standards is important. Because the problem is that I'd like to see them kind of limited in terms of what they are, because I really don't want to see us teaching to a test. I really want to see us teaching to learn. One of the things we didn't really talk about, and I really believe this is critical, is I think we need to fund more and more preschool programs for all children, because preschool is kind of where a lot of this starts. And in addition, I think I want to just touch on, I am the proud recipient of a liberal arts education from the College of William and Mary. I think that we have done our kids a disservice and our society a disservice by cutting funding for the arts, by cutting funding for music, literature. I think that those are areas that teach us to learn, teach us to expand our minds in ways that are healthy, beneficial, and while I do believe that we need to teach technology and we need to integrate technology into schools, I really do not like to see us defunding the arts, and because I think music and it just enriches our lives. And my involvement with the Governor's School of the Arts, you really see that. You see just an enriched life when you can include that in our curriculum. Not to mention the links between things like music and math. So those are just some things I wanted to say.
Yep. Great. Shifting topics just a little bit here to something actually very close to home to the 2nd District. What is your position on offshore drilling?
Against it.
And you can elaborate?
I can elaborate.
Totally up to you.
Against it. We are a district that has 2 NASA facilities. We're the only congressional district in the United States that has 2 NASA facilities. And that's important in terms of the type of technology and some of the original concepts of clean energy, some of the things that they learned when they went out to the moon really happened within 5-10 minutes from this building. Addressing against offshore drilling then creates a question of, so where are we going to get our renewable energy? What are we going to do? What types of clean energy jobs are available? So I think it's a whole new world in terms of the kind of economy that we can build here in the 2nd District. Israel has some excellent technology. There's the Virginia Israeli Advisory Board that is doing some things with solar and drones and some of the other energy opportunities out in the Southwest. We need to bring them here to the 2nd District.
Well, I have a little bit of personal experience about offshore drilling. My wife's parents are from New Orleans and Baton Rouge, which they call Cancer Alley, with all the petrochemicals and the oil platforms and everything. This makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Not only were we home to the largest military, and they need to provide their war games, when I was stationed at DNS Piers, we went on war games. And you need to have a free and unfettered area to do this. Not only do we need to make sure that we do not have any oil platforms or oil wells, there is absolutely no oil platform, no oil well, no pipeline that does not leak. They all leak. It's what we are going to put up with or what we are going to accept. So absolutely no to offshore drilling.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely oppose offshore drilling. I live in Virginia Beach, and when President Trump lifted the ban on it, was it April, I believe it was, I participated in a protest down at the ocean front where I have a sign in my yard that says I oppose it, and I attended the Brock Environmental Center's event that they had. We had someone from the Virginia Aquarium. Joe Bouchard came there and talked about how the Department of Defense is against it. And it's also, tourism is, it could negatively impact our economy in such a way. Plus, the ecosystem, an oil spill could destroy the ecosystem. Not to mention the seismic blasting that they have to do in order to find where the oil is and how deep it is, and all the different companies that apply for permits. We learned about that at the Brock Center that day. And we don't want, there's the right whale, there's only 450 of that species, that's the Atlantic right whale off the coast there. And so we don't know what damage that might cause as well for them. So to protect our environment and our economy, we have to oppose this. And we also got the city council, we lobbied them to get Virginia Beach City Council to put out a resolution opposing it. So you have to be very vigilant with what's happening. You have to attack it in lots of different ways to stop something like this. So always be vigilant, and we need to stop it.
Thank you very much. Offshore drilling. You know, we get so much of our revenue from tourism. We have so much revenue from our military. Why in the world would we want to risk our tourism industry? Why would we want to risk alienating the military for offshore drilling? Now, I do believe that we need to put our money towards technology for clean types of energy. So no, I would be completely opposed to offshore drilling. It's a state issue. Again, I think the congressman can use the bully pulpit to discuss this at the state level. And as far as the federal level go, I think if push comes to shove, I think we need to look at federal restrictions on the offshore drilling.
So, okay, now I asked you a little bit of a trick question there, because now I want to ask you, are you supportive or not supportive of offshore wind farms?
Well, yes, I'm supportive of offshore wind farms because of the opportunity that it provides for renewable energy. Again, it's a gold mine in terms of our ability to create the jobs, educate the children as we are talking about, into some new careers and new opportunities to get into whether it's solar, whether it's wind. But our schools have to produce a citizen that is ready, a global citizen that's ready to address some of the opportunities that we would have in clean energy, and wind is one of those opportunities.
I support renewables. I do support wind farms. What I don't support is whatever the Navy says that we've got to be able to do so they have unfettered access. We're the largest Navy base in the world. If they say they're against wind farms, we're going to have to do something for that. We depend on the Navy for huge amounts of revenue. They already started base closings a few years ago. We do not want to change and put forth impediments to the Navy. This is national security. We've got to make sure we have national security covered. We also got to make sure we're into renewables. Fossil fuels is going to be a wave that's going to be less and less as we go, but we do rely on it now. Wave technology is there, wind technology is there, but for the coast of Virginia, we've got to make sure we work with the Navy, not against the Navy. And so, yes, I support wind energy, but we've got to be in conjunction with the Navy.
Okay, so I support it as well. And when I attended that event at the Brock Environmental Center, they talked about how they were going to put it between the shipping channels at the Chesapeake Bay. There is where they were going to place it. And when they put the seismic blasting that they have to do to find out the best place to put them, to secure them, it's not as deep and it's not as loud. And I believe the military approved for it to be there, if I remember correctly from what we did. There are certain areas where the military says it's okay because they are a huge part of our economy, so we have to work in conjunction with them, like Gary said.
Once again, I'm just going to simply say, I'm in favor of any kind of renewable energy, but I'm not in favor of anything that's going to put at risk our tourism industry or our association with the Navy. 2nd District has the largest Navy base in the world, and we have got to support the Navy. And I am a strong proponent of increasing the fleet, getting up to the 350 ships, increasing the technology that the Navy needs, particularly around missile defense systems. The Navy has been by far way ahead of all the other departments in terms of technology for missiles. So we have to work hand in hand with the Navy. That's our reading. One of the other things I forgot to mention regarding this is that I was just at a seminar on the sea level rise, and one of the things they talked about is the fact that we do this offshore drilling and some of these other things with the what do you call it, the dynamite, whatever. That it, seismic, well, thank you. One of the things they're doing is that it actually is raising the sea level even higher, even faster. And so I think we need to consider how that's impacting. Because I've seen in Virginia Beach firsthand how neighborhoods are just being washed away, and we've got to address the rising sea level. It's a huge issue. I talked to one of the city councilmen in Hampton on how they're working with the Dutch on how to live with the rising sea level as opposed to just kind of putting up with it. So I think that, and I guess the other thing about the wind farms, and I'm not sure that the technology is even there. The salt water is just going to corrode everything. So if they fix that, then great. But I don't know how practical that's really going to be. I mean, I love the wind farms they have down south in near Hertford and Elizabeth City, but I'm not sure how effective it's going to be in the ocean. But at the end of the day, anything that puts to risk our tourism, anything that puts to risk our alienating the Navy, and where we don't work with the Navy, then I think we need to oppose.
Great. Now, since we're in the Chesapeake Bay, let's stay there. Is the bay healthy enough? Does it still need protection and support? What is your vision as a member of Congress for the Chesapeake Bay?
So no, the Chesapeake Bay still needs help. If we had Tyler Madsen here from the Sierra Club, she would tell us point by point. But my vision for the Chesapeake Bay is, of course, to make sure that we take in consideration our industry, for our fishing, for the natural resources that we have, understanding that there are several accords that the state of Virginia has participated in for the Chesapeake Bay. That we need to make sure that there's money available there in order to do some of the things that many of us have participated in cleaning the bay for Chesapeake Bay Day. But I think that in the second district we have a golden opportunity to also create a way to take more advantage of the tourism of the Chesapeake Bay. And for me, it's an economic development issue, which is to expand our ferry system. There's a ferry in Surrey. I envision, if you go take a balloon with me and look down over the 2nd Congressional District, I see a ferry system that connects the Eastern Shore with Virginia Beach, with a unified Fort Monroe, so that our transportation issues and traffic and our tourism issues can be better addressed. So it's an economic development, and as some of my colleagues have said, they're not my opponents, some of my colleagues have said, here's an opportunity to look at the waterfront, to look at the sea level rise, to look at flooding, to look at all of those issues. There's a Chesapeake Bay caucus, as you probably are familiar with in Congress. Congressman Bobby Scott sits on that caucus. But there's some other things, historical preservation, which are critical to how we can better save the Bay and how we can address some of the financial issues that the Bay will need and will continue to need. We have a port. We've not talked much about our port. We don't talk about the release out of the shipping channels. We don't talk about the level of the ships coming and going and what they bring in the water and some of the environmental issues that we have. So the Bay is doing well, the wetlands, all of what's going on, but we're always going to need to have to protect the Chesapeake Bay.
Well, the Chesapeake Bay is one of the largest estuaries on Earth. We've got to protect it, and it's an ongoing struggle. With the ships, like Sean was saying, it is against the law to dump your sewage and dump your waste in any body of water, no matter which part of the world that you're in. The very idea that, what is that guy's name that they hired to destroy the EPA, Zinke or somebody like that? They are cutting funding from not only Virginia, but in all areas. It is insane to try to just let pollution, let effluent, without trying to protect the bay. The sea level rise is a for real concern. The Navy is treating it as a national security issue, so this is real. Once we flood our areas. You have all the pesticides, all the nitrates, all the just dog feces, to put it mildly, running into the bay. This increases the algae, increases the dead zones of it, increases dying of natural grasses. So we have to protect the Chesapeake Bay. This is an ongoing struggle, and when the federal government turns their back on us for this, and yes, we need to promote this for our tourism. So yes, I support the Chesapeake Bay. Yes, I support the state funding to protect it. And yes, we're going to have to hold the federal government accountable, introduce legislation to bring back the federal dollars to protect our bay.
I volunteered for the very first ever Clean the Bay Day in Virginia Beach many years ago. We absolutely must be vigilant to protect our bay and to make sure that it continues to be healthy and to be healthier. To protect our fishing industries and our tourism. And so that is something that we definitely need to do. We need to continue to improve the health of the bay and look out for it and protect it.
I guess I'm a romantic. I remember hearing stories of early settlers coming in to settle Jamestown, landing at First Landing. They looked into the bay and they could see 30 and 40 feet into the bay because the water was so pure from the oyster population and other filtrations. So when I think of that, I think, wouldn't that be wonderful to see? Wouldn't that be something we could see in our lifetime? So, yeah, I believe the bay, I'm thrilled that the bay has improved, but I would really like to see it continue. I don't want to see, I mean, again, tourism for 2nd District is a critical industry, and I think we need to protect it at all costs. A healthy Chesapeake Bay, a beautiful Chesapeake Bay supports our industry, and it's near and dear to my heart. So, I think that we do need to strengthen, particularly some of our regulations regarding leakage of sewer. I live in Allenton, and we were required to get rid of septic tanks because they were leaking into the bay. But the city has problems with leaking into the bay as well, the city sewer system. So I think we need to really look at ways we can strengthen that. And again, I'm going to reiterate, in addition to kind of federal dollars that we might be able to get as a junior congressman, I do think that there are a lot of federal grants that are available. And again, I believe that we can open up more congressional offices at less money and staff them with grant writers so that we can help local charities and local organizations receive federal grants that will additionally clean the bay and take care of that. So I do think that that's another issue. Yes, sea level rise, I don't know if we're going to address that later. I'm assuming we will. Yeah, hopefully. Okay. Oh, excellent. Then I won't even go into that right now. But no, I would love to see a restored bay. I'd love to be able to see 30 feet into the bay.
Well, all right, so we started out in the Chesapeake Bay. Let's broaden the scope a little bit. You anticipated this. Climate change and sea level rise is perhaps the existential crisis of the future. What role can the federal government play? What role can Congress play in addressing that? I won't say solve it, but addressing it.
There's some good work taking place now in the infrastructure caucus in Congress. Should I be elected, that's one of the caucuses that I am looking forward to joining, because we have to make sure that our cities have the federal funding for the infrastructure that's needed, whether it's in Buck Road to address the shoreline and shoring up the concerns that we have for flooding, or whether it's, as Gary's been saying, talking about the Navy. And it's not a future problem, it's a now problem. Because if we're not able to get sea level rise under control, especially in Norfolk, we are looking at the prospects of the military moving elsewhere. So that's a real conversation taking place now, and that's a real top priority for something so dear and near to the heart of the 2nd Congressional District. The Paris Accord, the Paris Agreement, it's ridiculous that we're not a part of the Paris Agreement. Our leadership as a nation around the world is in jeopardy, obviously because of who is in the White House currently, but fundamental issues like sea level rise, climate change, the effort not to hire people in many of our federal agencies now in order to not be able to address some of the concerns that we have now is a crisis. It's a real serious issue for us. So yes, the city of Norfolk, Virginia Beach, but especially as it relates to the wherewithal of our Navy and the impact that the Navy has on our economy, the impact that veterans have on our economy, and understanding that it is a national security issue for us here in Virginia, especially in the 2nd Congressional District.
Well, climate change is real. And as a businessman, I look forward to the coming years to what my business could advance to. Why in the world would you poison the very place that you live in? It doesn't make sense. So yes, the Navy is already, and they have plans now, and they're making plans now because yes, sea level rise is a real problem, especially with the Navy. So it's Navy security on that end of it. But sea level rise is yes, it is real. Climate change is real. There's not a scientist in the world that's going to be able to tell you 100% absolutely, because science does not deal in absolutes. So yes, we have to address this. No matter how many scientists that Trump fires, this is going to occur with us or without us. So we need to make sure that we have the programs in place to deal with climate change and to deal with it effectively.
Okay, I agree. Climate change is real. Science is real. We had issues in Virginia Beach with flooding, Windsor Woods area. In Norfolk, we have it's a sea level rise is a threat. I know that in Virginia Beach, one of the things they're working on is storm drainage. The Army Corps of Engineers is working on that section of Virginia Beach, but it's very expensive. I think Congress needs to fund that in order to fix those drainage systems, and so that's where Congress is going to come in, I believe, the most, as well as forcing the EPA and Trump and everybody else to do something about it.
So when Obama was in office, he had some executive orders that were very, very helpful in Virginia Beach. I know we're on the peninsula, but in Virginia Beach, we have a lot of developers who finally were handcuffed in terms of irresponsible construction practices in Virginia Beach. So for instance, as just mentioned, roughly, I think the estimate is about $600 million is required in Virginia Beach to take care of some of this floodwaters and control. And you know how much they funded? They funded about $130 million. And they funded that over 15 years. So on the one hand, I do think that the federal government has an issue, but I think the local government's going to have to address this. Now, I know that the city of Hampton has engaged the Dutch and are learning how to live with the water, which I think is a great idea, and I think we need to look at that. Obviously, there's a threat to our economy with the Navy. Certainly, they could pull out, and there's some issues there we need to address. I think a lot of that's going to be local government, but here's where I think the federal government can come in. So when Obama was in office, the executive orders handcuffed the irresponsible construction practices. Barring that, Donald Trump comes in and he, what am I supposed to mention his name, 45? Okay, 45 comes in, and he eliminates those, and all of a sudden, the Virginia Beach is now facing all kinds of new development, and a lot of it is irresponsible. We were just at the hearing when they talked about the pier. The city's going to put in $25 million for a pier, but they're not going to fund the flood issues that are going on. So I think that's a problem. And if the executive order isn't going to solve it, then I think maybe legislation. But again, let's not be naive. Is a junior congressman going to be able to entice federal funds to help some of this? Maybe some, but I think that a lot of the local government's going to have to really work on it. I think to the degree, again, if we can get federal grants written and get grant writers in the offices, I think that might help. I think but I do think we have to address the whole executive order. If we can't, then we try to address those guidelines for legislation. So, for instance, we're looking at roughly 6 to 8 feet of of increased, water levels, and I think the building codes in Virginia Beach are right now at 1.5. Isn't that insane? So we've got developers building for 1.5 feet when we know we're going to have 6 feet. We've got to maintain these structures. So every one of these structures that are coming through is going to have to be maintained. And it's just going to be more money. So local government's going to have to address this. Federal government, I think, can help. I think creatively we may have to try to do what I'm saying with trying to get federal grants through the offices. And I guess the last thing the federal government can deal with is, I think, national flood insurance. So I think that really is an area where I think we can work. One of the things that we're finding is that the national flood insurance is raising so high that it's really chasing people out of their homes. And I don't know if it's on the peninsula as much, but I know in Virginia Beach the flood insurance is chasing people out of their homes. So I know that there's plans to kind of lock that in. But I do think that there are some other, and I don't have the answer right now for flood insurance. I wish I did, but I don't have a full answer on that. But I think we can develop it. I think that we need to look at the flood insurance to kind of help people stay in their homes and make it affordable. So I think that's a role that the federal government can play. I think those are the two areas I think. I think building codes where if we need to restrict irresponsible construction, we do it. And then I think national flood insurance needs to be revamped so that it really answers some of this question.
Great. We've got time probably for 2 more rounds of questions and then closing statements. So, and I think this, the first of those 2, I think, will be very short. It's a mechanical working question of Congress. President Trump proposed the other day bringing back earmarks. Do you support bringing back earmarks, or should we continue the ban on earmarks that's in place right now?
We should continue the ban that's in place now. Again, the tax act is going to create a whole new world for us as the $1 trillion deficit, the increase in the tax plan. Many of the issues that we're talking about now, the federal funding for addressing subsidies, climate change, nutrition, you name it, they're all on the chopping block, and it has been created, on one hand, a tax cut, but on the other hand, it's really a way to get about cutting some of the entitlements and some of the programs that we've been looking at for a long time.
Since when is pork barrel politics? You give me what I want, and I'll give you what you want. That's never been a good idea. Each state should stand independently. Virginia needs to be a vibrant economy, and we need to make sure it stays that way. So no, I'm against earmarks or pork barrel politics. As far as the tax bill that Sean is talking about, as a businessman, there is hidden costs that are yet to arrive. This is a bill that is truly going to devastate our economy. Not only is there no money left for infrastructure that we truly, truly need, now we're going to have to prioritize whether it's going to be for airports, our power grids that's absolutely susceptible to solar flares, our roads, our bridges, our crumbling infrastructure. These are real problems. As a builder, I understand this. Steel and concrete do not last forever. So there is no money left. This tax bill is going to have so many addendums wrote into it. The bill itself had on the outside of it scribble marks, no OKs, nobody's initials. So I don't even know if it's truly legal. I wrote contracts. I understand contracts. As far as Trump, let's face facts. He does not understand the word govern. Govern is a very powerful word to understand how to govern. So no, back to the original question, no, I don't support pork barrel politics.
Okay. So the GOP tax scam I've talked to some businessmen, and any gains they make in the federal issue, they lose with the state, but they're mostly worried about the $1 trillion deficit. So if we're going to have $1 trillion, spend $1 trillion, or lose $1 trillion, why don't we invest that in infrastructure? Here we're surrounded by water, We need to repair our bridges, our tunnels. We need to protect our port. It's so vital to our commerce here in the 2nd District. Infrastructure would be so much better, and that would be a much better use of that money. And so I agree with Sean and Gary about the earmarks.
Well, as a junior member of Congress, I would absolutely be opposed to the earmarks. But as a senior member of Congress, I might have to rethink that issue, because I think that's one of the ways that we can get certain special projects funded. And don't kid yourself. Sometimes you got to make a deal. And I guess in business, sometimes you do have to make deals. I don't like work-girl politics. I don't like trading this and that. But sometimes if we're going to get certain things funded, we may need to. So initially, I'm going to say no, because as a junior member of Congress, I think we're going to be left out. But maybe it's something we can revisit. I heard a number of people talking about this tax plan, and it is a disaster. And I don't think anybody actually read it. One of the things that I think that people haven't even figured out. Oh, you read it? Oh, cool. Okay, excellent. One of the things that kind of strikes me is that we love to talk about the marriage penalty, and yet we just built it into the tax plan. You know, if you're a married couple, you know what if you itemize your deductions, you know what your deductions are as a married couple? $10,000. If you're 2 people living in the same home, it's $10,000 a piece. I don't know if anybody actually read that. It's kind of insane, isn't it? We just kind of built in a marriage penalty. Isn't that crazy? And again, I look at this, and I'm a small business guy, and I think that if we can use federal government to encourage and regulations to encourage small business, encourage entrepreneurs. In fact, I taught entrepreneurship. That's a passion. If we can encourage entrepreneurs to start new companies and new businesses, that's where we need to go with tax policy. This tax policy favors big banks. It favors big business. I know what that's like. 2008, I was the Virginia Business of the Year, and my bank went bankrupt and took me along for the ride. I know what it feels like to have a greedy bank take my business, take my home, and to see federal tax policy and federal policy favor big business over small. It's not fair. It's a personal issue, okay? So we haven't seen anything in this tax bill that favors small business, but let me talk about some things that really could favor small business, okay? When President Obama took office, he modified the tax plan to allow small businesses to take losses backwards 5 years instead of typically 3 years. That created a lot of funding for small businesses to stay afloat in 2008, 9, and 10. One of the best policies he's had. Those are the kinds of policies I would advocate for, because they are very effective at helping people on the ground when they need it the most. Now, on the other side, I think there's some crazy regulations. Now, I'm a small businessman, right? We have some crazy regulations out there. I had a 2-story store, the second floor. And do you know that I was required under the ADA to build a handicap accessible bathroom where one didn't exist on a second floor where there was no elevator? Isn't that kind of insane? It didn't make sense. It cost me out of my pocket about 20 grand to create that thing. And of course, it was never used. So those kinds of policies from the federal government are not helpful for small business. So I really would like to see and advocate tax policy and government policy to support and promote small business, particularly small business entrepreneurship, and particularly minority businesses. I know one of the things we've talked about in Virginia Beach, they're going to need to update their libraries. One of the things they're going to use the Minority Business Council and those members to, and that's where I think that needs to go. I mean, we're going to fund these kinds of projects, and we need to fund them that way. Am I hitting my time?
You're hitting your time. All right,
Okay.
let me get one more question in.
Okay.
We haven't talked
And
about.
Gary talked about that bill that was written all over. If I was grading that, it would have got, as a student turned in, it would have been failing grade.
We haven't talked about foreign policy or our role in the world. Congress has a role to play there. Try to be brief if you can. There is a debate in this country about our role in the world. It was a debate that we had continuously. It was a debate that's been engaged pretty seriously since the end of the Cold War, since 9/11. What should our role in the world be? As a member of Congress, what worldview would you believe in and advocate for in terms of our role in the world?
First of all, I'm not an isolationist. I believe that we should take the long view, the global view. my family's export management company for 20, 30 years now. Took us to far parts of the world, whether it was Russia, all the places where they tell you not to go to. So I was in Moscow, I was in Bogota, Colombia, I was in those places in which we were looking for ways in which America could do business. As a leader of the free world, we do have to engage in trade, hence our port system here is so important. We do have to engage in humanitarian funding. I'm actively involved now in the current business I'm in, which is part of the broadband industry, to take broadband to rural communities and underserved communities. We do have to advocate and use our humanitarian aid, the Agency for International Development, the Overseas Private Investment Corporations. Those are organs of the U.S. government that do great work overseas every day. No, I don't think we should fight any unnecessary wars. We should have a foreign policy that's worthy of the sacrifices of our military and worthy of the fact that how we treat the least of us, whether we're here in the United States of America or overseas, speaks volumes about how we're perceived overseas. When I have, in the business community, when I have people who say, most of my partners are from France, from Europe, from Latin America, from Africa, clearly the remark the other day by the president, I believe that somebody should be standing up asking, as a member of Congress, I would be standing up asking for the president to resign. I am appalled at the level, and there's an argument there. Let him say what he wants to say. He doesn't know what he's saying. He knows exactly what he's saying. He knows exactly what he's saying. So all of the racist remarks, all of those things are part of a foreign policy to send a message to his base and to other parts of the world. 80% of the people in the world are of color. So he has offended 80% of the people in the world. And our ability and our standing today in the world is so drastic. It's so removed from where Republican, no, he is a racist. He is a racist.
Yes.
And that has everything to do.
Yes, he is.
And I would hope that my colleagues would say he's a racist. He doesn't believe he's a racist. I think he believes he's a segregationist. Hence George Wallace. Some of you are old enough in here to understand George Wallace. So our standing in the world is about the fact that we are the United States of America. In the 2nd District, we're the place that this country was founded. The first representative government in 1619, and the first Africans
I got to ask
came in the same year.
Okay.
So we need to take our lead in the world.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Donald Trump is a racist. Make no mistake about it. But he has been a racist. This is not something we know. The problem we have is Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, and the rest of the Republicans.
What's our role in the world?
Well, our role in the world is not being drugged down the mountain. We should put America back up on top of that mountain. From the Mideast corridor through the Asian Pacific nations to our South American nations, we have some real problems in the world. China, Russia, Syria, the allies that are allied against us. Benjamin Netanyahu is just as bad as Trump. I'm telling you, war hawks are there. There is no such thing as a good war. As a veteran, I understand. We've got to make sure that we no longer will go ahead and have war. If you truly think that China wants a unified South and North Korea, you're crazy. Russia does not want that. Nobody wants a diplomatic Korea on their doorstep for fear it will spread to the other nations. So we have problems here, from the butcher of Syria to the butcher of North Korea to butcher of Russia, from killing our press, shooting his opponents. So we've got to make sure America is still the leader for the democracies of the world. And we're going to have to push her back up on there and quit letting Trump and the Republicans drag them down.
Okay, thank you.
Well, it's a global world now. It's a global marketplace. In schools all across the country, we have sister cities. We Skype with them in Scotland and different places that I've been in schools. We need to be leaders of the free world. We need to get back to diplomacy. We used to be a leader in that.
So that is something that I think America needs to do.
We are the leader of the free world, and when we fail to lead, chaos abounds. There's more wars, there's more terrorism, and there's more problems. I really do believe that Teddy Roosevelt had said it right: speak softly and carry a big stick. As a congressman, my greatest advocacy in this area would be to support rebuilding a strong Navy. And I have a history in this. My grandfather was a Navy admiral and was the president of the United States Navy League, advocated for this in the 60s. My father was a Navy captain. My mom, anybody familiar with the Ombudsman program in the Navy ships? Anybody familiar with those? Do you know that that was my mom's brainchild when she founded Navy Lifeline? And the reason she did that is because we needed to encourage re-enlistment in the Navy. And that was one of the issues was Navy wives were telling their husbands to not re-enlist. So that's one of the programs that my mom helped found. I'm a strong advocate for the Navy. I had wished I applied for the Naval Academy, but I didn't get in. But I've always been one of those nerds who read Jane's Fighting Ships. And so I want to see us rebuild our Navy. And that would be one of my greatest advocacies, would be to rebuild our Navy and strengthen it. It's the best missile defense and everything else. I think the second issue I want to just touch on is, and this may be where I'm different, I heard Netanyahu. I am pro-Israel. They are the democracy in the Middle East. They are a critical ally. And I think we need to support them. I'm a member of AIPAC, and I have done business for decades with Israeli firms. Yeah, okay, I'm a jeweler, and there's a lot of diamond guys in Israel, and I've done a lot of business with them. I'm also going to add that they have done some amazing technology. I do CAD programming and 3D modeling, and they have some amazing stuff coming out of Israel. They're a wonderful country, and I believe that we need to see a two-state solution, a demilitarized Palestinian state, living side by side in peace with Israel. And as America, I think we need to force the Palestinians back to the negotiating table instead of taking unilateral actions in international bodies rather than negotiating directly with Israel. So I'm a very strong advocate of Israel. I don't know how this room feels about that, but that's something I believe in. A strong national navy, and I guess I would just add, why would we want to provoke enemies through words and Twitters and tweets? Unnecessarily. It's our children. My second son is serving the Coast Guard, and it's our children, it's our neighbors, it's our friends who are going to have to put their lives on the line if we have to face and confront China or one of these other countries. There is no reason for us to be antagonizing and provoking them with words. Let's speak softly, carry a big stick, and make sure that we have that big stick available. And that's the U.S. Navy.
Thank you very much. Okay.
May I say one thing? Let me say that. I support Israel 100%. Without Israel, the stability of the Middle Eastern corridor, we would have a problem. But I do have problems with Benjamin Netanyahu poking people in the face on trying to do what they want to do. You cannot force the entire Palestinian state to do what you want to do. I understand this. Trump decided to move our embassy to Jerusalem. We're religious. We understand this, but this was a blatant, in-your-face type of deal.
All right, thank you.
Can I respond to that?
You guys can spend the next 5 hours here responding. I'm gonna let you move to closing statements. There are lots of topics that we could spend 5 hours talking here. I'm going to let you move to closing statements, and then the room is open. You can talk to people until midnight or until they need to clean the room. So, 2 minutes for closing statements, please.
Thank you again for this opportunity to have this discussion. In 2016, when I was a Democratic nominee, Scott Taylor refused to stand on the stage with me. So I am appreciative of this opportunity to have a conversation about our issues. Let me tell you a little something about myself. I was born in Newport News, Hampton High School crabber. Any crabbers here? Hampton High, you're not wearing red. Hampton High School crabber. Went to Brown University, had a chance to become the first black president of student body, youngest and first female at Brown. For Brown, I went to the London School of Economics. And so, yes, I could stay here for days to talk about foreign policy. I love talking about foreign policy. After London School of Economics, I said to one of my professors, I think I want to do something with philosophy. He said, you're in the wrong place. You need to go about an hour and a half away. So I went to St. Hilda's College at Oxford University. And there, on the last day after I graduated, we walked down the high street. And I think my mother picked up a book, and the book said, the purpose of education is to know when somebody is making a fool out of you. I wish I had got the book earlier when I first got there. Scott Taylor's not going to make a fool out of us. We're going to make sure that he is defeated in November. My mother is a former teacher. My father, a restaurant. Some of you might have recalled Seanstown House Restaurant in Hampton for a number of years, a nightclub, and opportunity to have some of the major entertainers come down the East Coast and perform at the restaurant. My father said something one day to me. He said, well, you know, you need to be in a business that people are working for you around the clock. So I said, I went to all those schools. Let me figure out what it could be. Well, it was international trade. So our company represented American companies overseas and far places in the world and had a chance to really do business. And yes, we do understand how trade and aid can work side by side with diplomacy. And we have an opportunity to do some things, whether we're fighting ISIS or Hamas. Or I could have a whole conversation about Jerusalem back here. I was in Jerusalem and understood that Jerusalem is an international city. My uncles, I learned a lot from my uncles. My uncle who, great-great-great-grandfather with a history in the colored cavalry at that time. I've traced our military service back to the 1800s. I have one uncle who bucked the system, didn't go into the Army, decided to go into the Navy. Later on, most of you are familiar with the movie Hidden Figures. Okay, so he was a male Hidden Figures. He was number 3 at NASA and did much of the same as what you saw in the movie with Katherine Johnson, who goes to my uncle's church, by the way. We have an opportunity to look at our legacy here in the 2nd Congressional District. I am a product of Nicholas Deering, who came through Jamestown in 1623. He met our Powhatan Confederacy relatives who were already here, free black people, Goodman Brown, who was in the Virginia General Assembly in the late 1800s. It's an opportunity for us to understand that our history is American history. It's a history that is based on tourism, and so much of the conversation that we're having and the issues that we talked about tonight are critical. There's one area that I want to follow up on something that David said, and it's very critical in terms of the financial and funding and grant opportunities there are in the federal government now. Having taken a close look at the various caucuses, there is no caucus in the Congress now that would address the federal funding, meaning giving opportunities for our municipalities. You know, often you hear about our state delegates going to sit down with the city council to talk about the agenda for the city council. We never hear about our cities and counties sitting down with members of Congress to talk about an agenda. I don't like the fact that we don't have that. The Commissioner of Revenue is shaking her head like, yeah, there must be more money for me somewhere. But I don't like the fact that we are, as folks who are running for Congress, we're put over in a corner. Local politics is congressional politics. There are unfunded mandates that we need to fight for. So I would appreciate your vote. This is going to be a great campaign. I can see now. I've had an opportunity to learn something about my colleagues. I would hope that you come up after and ask us questions.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was going to keep going.
You know, we could go on for days, but we need to talk about the here and now. The 2nd District of Virginia needs representation. Scott Taylor has abandoned us with no problem whatsoever. We need better jobs. We need to make sure our ports are still number 1. Our shipyards are still number 1. Their apprenticeship programs, so all people can be raised up. We've got to make sure our health insurance companies are held accountable. If they decide to leave us and come back and want to spend some money here, we need to make them pay a penalty. The big pharmaceuticals, the same way. It is unconscionable to let some big pharmaceutical company that takes 22% of the profits of a $590 billion trade. There is no health insurance company that's broke. There is no pharmaceutical company that's broke. Yet they stopped the funding for cancer research, for Alzheimer's. So we need to change this and make sure we hold the health insurance companies accountable. I was born in Harlan County, Kentucky. Terrible poverty. So we got to make sure that we raise the rates for everybody. A living wage is just the right thing to do. Not only is it morally right, it makes economic sense. They will spend money here. They will be able to be customers of the restaurants, the entire scenario. That just reminded me of what Chuck Grassley said. Of course they need to be a state tax repeal, simply because we spend our money on wine, women, and song. Well, that might work for men, but what about women that are head of household? Do they spend their money on wine, women, and song? This is a foolish statement. Shows you how out of touch they truly are. But I truly believe we've got to make sure we're educating our workforce. We've got to make sure we have the healthiest workforce. We need to fight for a universal health care. And like David said, I had a friend that lives in England now. Over here, she had cancer, and she would have died here. Over there, she got the help that she needed with the National Health Service. And no, you do not have to wait 6 months for care. I was there, I know. But we have to fight for a universal care. We have to take it slow until we get there so we don't collapse the entire system. It's unconscionable that our children are going without health insurance. We need to stop that. And I believe I have a strong enough voice. I believe by now you know I'm not bashful. And as far as actually a junior congressman, that doesn't mean anything. That means you beat on somebody's door and say, look, I want to talk to you. Come here. We've got to do something to make sure Virginia stays vibrant. We've got to make sure our economy and our jobs are there for our children, your grandchildren, so we can actually move ahead. Virginia showed the way against hate and bigotry and racism. We elected Ralph and Justin and Mark and the other delegates. So we showed the rest of the nations Virginia has to lead the way. And I thank you for the time coming out here and taking your time to listen to us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm a coal miner's daughter from Coburn, Virginia. I grew up in a working class family, and my brothers and I got to go to college because of something somebody put in place for us. We used Pell Grants, scholarships, work study, and low-interest student loans. My brother's a doctor in Chesapeake. I have an advanced degree from UVA. And when I first started in my teaching degree, I was talking with my dad, and he was like, well, maybe you can teach this old man to read. My daddy was the first person I taught to read, and it's why I'm so passionate about education. It lifted my family from poverty to prosperity in just one generation. And also, in 1989, when I was home visiting, the coal mines were on strike because Pittston Coal Company was trying to take away retired miners and their widows' health benefits. So the company went on strike. I stood on that picket line next to my daddy to fight for the retired miners like my grandpa. So I've been a fighter since I was a young girl. I know that you have to fight for things. And in my work with the Education Association, I've built coalitions between police officers and firefighters, city workers, and the PTA in order to defeat policies that the school system and the city council or the state legislature or even DC, the policies that were coming from there. So I know how to build those coalitions. We have to have that to beat the Republican incumbent. So I've already have those deep roots and connections because of my 30 years of living in the district and teaching in the district. I taught at 6 different elementary schools, from the most affluent to the most at risk. So I understand all the different points of view. I understand the needs of the district in lots of different ways. And that's what I can bring. Educators are great collaborators. We're great communicators. Who better to go to DC to make them work together? We get children from all different backgrounds to create
these wonderful classroom communities where we learn and thrive together. So I think that's why we need to send a teacher to Congress to get them to work together and solve some problems for the American people. And I'm going to look out for the district here. I'm going to look out for everyone. Keep in mind that when you teach a child 7 hours a day for 180 days a year, they become your child for life. They're my kids. So I'm going to fight for them, and I'm going to fight for their families. I'm going to fight for working class families and middle class families because somebody fought for mine. And my brothers and I wouldn't be where we were if someone hadn't fought for us. So I'm going to continue the fight. I hope that you'll go to my website, KarenMallard.com. Go to our Facebook page, Karen Mallard for Congress. Follow us on Twitter, Mallard for VA. Find out how I've been challenging Scott Taylor for months. Her campaign was actually in a debate with him on December 23rd, and he got schooled by Teach. So send a teacher to Congress. Karen Mallard, thank you.
I am so happy that we've had this on the Peninsula because, you know, the 2nd District has been gerrymandered in such a way that the Peninsula is really underrepresented, right? Nobody who comes out here to hear your voice. We did tonight, but that's a big concern. So I'm glad that we're here. We can have this dialogue, and I welcome anybody to come up and talk to me. First of all, John, I appreciate your history. On a stone bridge between Lexington and Concord, my great-grand-uncle, many times past, Isaac Davis, led Acton Company and gave his life in the ultimate sacrifice, leaving 5 young children behind. That was my great-great-uncle. A year ago, I had a near-fatal heart attack, had a widowmaker, and it's good there were no widows to be made. I should have died, but it gave me the opportunity to reflect on what do I want the last half of my life to look like. I want to make a difference. And I think in Congress I can make a real difference representing this district. I was talking with Mike Gooding from Channel 13 earlier this afternoon, and we were reminiscing of the great days when we had William Whitehurst and Owen Pickett as representatives. Does anybody remember those guys? Now those men were true gentlemen, and they represented our district well. I want to be that kind of a congressman. I'm not, you know, Scott Taylor was too busy looking for his next conquest. I want to be the 2nd District, and I want to be there and represent you. And I want to create creative solutions, entrepreneurial solutions to address our problems and address them realistically. I had 7 stores, 2 on the Peninsula and the rest South Side. I've had a business throughout. I was recognized for entrepreneurial excellence. I've taught entrepreneurship. It's one of my passions. And I'd like to bring that creative thinking to the congressional office. And like I said, one of the things that I really want to do is I want to make the congressional offices meaningful so that you guys can come into the office and that we have the best customer service of any office, just like I did my stores, right? I want grant writers in there. I want people that will be advocates for you in that office. I don't want to be, there's a great distance. Scott Taylor has horrible constituent services. Horrible. If you want to call him and talk about the tax bill, you can't get anybody. They don't answer the phone. Their answering machine's full, so you can't really communicate with anybody. We need to change that, and I intend to change that. This election is personal. I'm on Obamacare, and I think it needs to be adjusted, it needs to be tweaked. But I'm going to fight with my last breath to make sure it's not. It's my health insurance. My son is a felon. He needs his rights restored, and it's personal when he is harassed and pulled over by police officers, and they want to search him, and he has no rights. And you know what? He's white, and he has a name that people know, but he's still harassed. So I know what that feels like. I know what that feels like. My father, like I said, is personal. My father's, with this tax bill, he's going to have higher taxes to pay for Apple and Microsoft and everybody else to bring back their money. It's not fair. I'd like to advocate for small businesses. I was a small businessman. And when 2008, my business went bankrupt because my bank went bankrupt. I, as a small businessman, had no protections for my home. You as a consumer have protections, but as a small businessman, they took my home. And I've known firsthand that the SBA is not an effective way to stimulate small business. There are other great policies that we can do, but that's not. So I'd be an advocate for small business. And it's personal because I grew up here. I got my I-64 education. I went to Kempsville High School, College of William & Mary, did some classes at ODU. I got my master's at Regent, and I taught at Chowan University in North Carolina, just down the road. It's personal. I've lived here all my adult life. I went to school when it was junior high school instead of middle school, and so it's personal. So I'm here running as a repentant Republican in a district that was gerrymandered for a Republican. And I know for a fact, when we get to the general election, I will have the deep connections that we need to take this seat back, to talk to those voters who are swing voters in this district and make this district a Democratic district. Because when we go to Congress, it's going to be a Democratic Congress. And if we don't take on Scott Taylor directly and realistically, we're going to lose. It's going to be a long night. But if we go there, and if I'm your congressman from a Democratic district with a Democratic Congress, then I know that we can be far more effective at improving and making Hampton Roads and the second district a beautiful place to live. So that's my hope and dream. Thank you very much.
A round of applause for the 4 candidates.
Don't run away, people. All right. Thanks for tuning in. If you've stuck with us this long and our battery has made it, then we appreciate it. You heard Karen. Go to KarenMallard.com, sign up, hit the join button if you'd like to join the mailing list, get on the email list, and if you're out of state watching this from somewhere else, you can go to KarenMallard.com, click on the donate button, and help us get through the primary. And I'm here with Crystal. She's a MSN contributor, former congressperson. How do you think?
I ran for Congress.
Excuse me. Yes, thank you. Former Congress
Not like Karen. She's
candidate.
Gonna get through.
There you go. So how do you think she did tonight?
Oh my God, she killed it. I mean, at the end when she said, "I'm going to fight for working class families because somebody fought for mine," I think that says it all. I mean, that's what we need. We need people who have actually lived in the real world, who know what the struggle is. And she, as a teacher, has been here fighting for kids for 30 years. She gets it. She's got deep roots, and she's going to be an awesome congresswoman.
So,
it's a great night.
While we still got people on the line, tell them a little bit about Progressive House Project and how they can find out more about that and get in touch with you on Twitter and Facebook.
Sure.
And stuff
So
like
People's
that.
House Project is devoted to getting working class candidates, progressive working class candidates who are running for Congress elected.
Iron Stash, Randy.
So we've got, Randy Bryce, Iron Stash, going against Paul Ryan as one of our candidates. We've got a terrific candidate in Tennessee going against Scott Desjardins, Mariah Phillips. We've got an awesome candidate in West Virginia, Richard Ojeda, 24-year Army veteran who is actually tweeting along tonight with the debate. So that was cool how the candidates are supporting each other. So we've got a lot of great folks out there.
I'll let you go. We're going to go try to get Karen, but if you want to check them out, we posted a link to the Vice segment on Progressive Health Project. It's on the Karen page under press. So let's go find the candidate real quick. Stand by. Excuse me, guys.
Some of our
Well, I'm just saying, I think income inequality is at the core of a lot of our problems.
Yeah.
And it was never addressed here.
Well, so we believe.
My name is George Meisel, by the way. Sorry.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Karen. Nice to meet you.
I believe in the $15 minimum
Yeah,
wage.
check. We have somebody by the front doing that, but there's a box right there if you want to start collecting.
CEO pay. There's a whole lot there.
Yeah, absolutely. Any questions you want to ask? I'll be happy to.
I'll catch on Facebook. Ask the question. You're very articulate. Love your passion. You're
Can
right.
you grab a box of signatures real quick? Because I think the signature forms. A young woman is over there right now trying to. I don't know if she wants to help sign them or whatever. In the blue jacket, the navy jacket.
The teachers took over the school board in Virginia Beach.
I was a Bernie Sanders delegate.
Well, in the school board election in Virginia Beach, there's a retired kindergarten teacher that's the chair, and the vice chair used to work for the school board. So I understand how to work elections and that sort of thing. I've done it since I was a teenager.
We have some time. I'll be watching you. Okay. I think we need more books and food and bombs.
Absolutely. That's what I'm talking about. Diplomacy.
if you got a hammer, that's your only tool, you're going to use that. You know, I think books, I think education, food.
So, I'm on the live stream. You want to tell everybody hi for watching, and how do you think it went and everything?
Well, from a PVC perspective, I can't give my opinion, but I thought personally, as Cassie Jacobs, Karen totally crushed it. Not PVC's perspective.
Hey, nice to meet you, Mike Wade.
Okay, yep.
Great job. We're going to have to get you a stopwatch next time.
I know. Yeah. The problem is, it's hard.
I'm on the live stream, by the way, so just so you know.
It's hard to moderate and do time, and so it helps have an external timer.
So
that's
I just want to mention one thing, because you moderated the debate with Saslaw and Norman at CNU 2015. I was listening out on the radio, and when Norman said that we wouldn't see a Democratic House of Delegates in his lifetime, I said challenge accepted. That's one of the main reasons why I ran for delegate last year.
No, you're right. And I've tweeted that out a couple times. You know, it's not lost on me that Norman said.
Yeah, right.
Well, I haven't talked to him since the election, so next time I talk to him, I'm going to remind him.
I'm so
All right, Karen, we're going to cut the stream, so just tell everybody thanks.
Thanks so much for tuning in tonight. We really appreciate it.
All right, guys.
Good evening.
Good night. We can hit the finish.